The Word of Weirdom. Revelation by and through the mind of an infant. Chapter 1, verses 1 through the end of Chapter 1.
Chapter 1, on the nature of religion. Those who recognize religion as a system of symbols and fictions, fables, superstitions, man-made fabric woven out of threads of various beliefs, a fiction. Those who recognize religion as a fiction frequently fail to recognize the power of fictions and the reality of fictions. For example, you might recognize, as I did at one point, I grew up in a religion that was the Latter-day Saints. It was very, what's called eschatological, which means it's focusing on the end days, the end of the world. And there are many scriptural traditions around the world that focus on like a Ragnarok type end of the world, an Armageddon. These stories about the last days, the end times, as if those scriptures that were given at the different times, in the different points in history, within the different contexts, as if they were projecting forward to a certain future date, rather than focusing psychologically on each individual person, in each individual lifespan. End of days doesn't mean for the earth or the planet, it means for the person. Each one of us will see the end of our days. And all of the scriptures, all of the wisdom traditions that have ever focused on the end of things did so as a contemplation on the nature of mortality. And so it's a bit ironic to me that people who would reject religion as a series of fantasies and symbols would, I don't know how to say it. It seems like that's a natural conclusion to make, but it's the first step on a journey that takes you further. It's not the final answer, that it's all just made up. It's made up to what end? Why is it made up? What is it doing? How does it function? What is its value? And the value of religion has always been to prepare a human for their own end of days, to live a life that is as free from conflict as possible. That's been the main valuable thing that religion has done, and why it's so sticky to the human psyche, and why it's so easy for people to misuse it and abuse it and manipulate people using religious symbols. The problem with that is the manipulation of people. It's the taking advantage of people. It isn't the symbols themselves. And that's where a lot of confusion gets laid. And religion itself gets a bad name. Because it's really manipulation. Religion itself just being a system of symbols meant to give a human being something to reflect on, a code of ethics, a code of behavior, a morality, a set of values and virtues. And very malleable, that also evolve, because the virtues, you can look at the virtues in the Old Testament, and the way of the world at that time is not the way of today. Things have changed. Slavery is no longer considered okay. Patriarchy as a means of oppressing the power of women is no longer seen as okay. So the values of a society evolve and change. And there's records of what was going on at certain points in history, the role that religion played in defining both the thing that you want and also the thing that you don't want, in the way that it created us versus them dichotomies, and created a lot of conflict that was a catalyst in the development of the human consciousness, coming to these conclusions that today seem so second nature to us, or they're becoming more so. We've still got a ways to go, but in accepting diversity, accepting everyone in equality. And if that type of a virtue rings true, it doesn't really matter what symbol that virtue is being expressed through. And if another person is expressing that virtue through a different system of symbols or a different set of religious stories, different fictions, different view of the world, different customs, and different ways of doing it, but they're still communicating this inclusive spirit that is willing to accept and support others without bias or prejudice. Those are just some thoughts I had.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.